Yeah, okay, the Gentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation, knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Gentry. The Jentry Podcast. The Jentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Jentry Podcast. Today, we have an incredible guest. We have Cyril Jefferson. He is the mayor of High Point, North Carolina, but he is more than that. He is a devoted husband and father. He is a business owner in the community, and he was already a successful council member. Cyril, thank you for being here today. How are you doing, my brother?
Jonathan, I'm great. I'm glad to be here, man. I appreciate you making time for me to be on this conversation. Big fan of the podcast, the conversations that you're having with folks who are fighting the good fight in public service have been so enriching, so inspiring, and quite frankly, man, I can't wait to dive in.
I appreciate the kind words, but it's public servants like you that make this all possible. So that's a perfect way to start. Bring me back to your childhood. Did you always know you're going to be in public service? Was this something that was bound to happen? What was it like growing up? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I was born in a small city in upstate New York called Utica. It's about an hour east of Syracuse, about 4.5 hours north of New York City. And at a young age, my family moved and relocated here to the Triad region. And the Piedmont Triad region, consisting of Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and High Point. We lived for 10 years in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County area. Then my mom remarried, and we moved to High Point. And so I started high school here in High Point, North Carolina, graduated from the T.W. Andrews High School. That's also where I met the love of my life. Now, don't get it twisted though, Jonathan. We didn't date in high school. She was a prom queen. I was not. She'll tell you real quick, I was one of those band geeks because I was in marching band. I was drumline captain. But she eventually ended up being one of those band geeks too. She ended up being captain of the dance squad in the marching band. And we became really great friends. Then later on got married. Now raising our family. We've got 2 boys who we love with our whole heart. And living here in High Point, what we believe to be the best place that you could possibly be.
It's incredible. I love that story of, you met in high school, but the stars didn't align yet.
No,
Everything was still figuring itself out, but you came together, and that union has brought 2 amazing boys. So you got to tell me, what is the secret sauce of High Point, North Carolina?
yeah, so I often say the secret sauce of High Point is also High Point's superpower. High Point's greatest asset are our people. And it's the folks who not only choose to call High Point home, the folks who visit, the people who invest and start businesses here, folks who grew up here, maybe they live somewhere else. High Point, through the ages in our 166-year history, we are a city that's done so much, and it's only because of the people who choose to do those things, those people who choose to lead, who choose to take on in bold ways, is why we could become the furniture capital of the world. It's the reason why we've got best university in the entire southeastern United States. It's the reason why the goals that we set up to achieve, it feels like we're able to fire on all cylinders. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have challenges. It doesn't mean that we don't still have areas of improvement, but I often find solace, I often find comfort in knowing that with our growth, with the opportunity, with the acceleration of where our city's going, that we can indeed address those challenges. We can indeed work on our areas of improvement because we got the people who can make that happen. We've got the people at the table who are willing and who are committed. So it is truly our people. That's the secret sauce.
That's incredible. And it's powerful to hear that coming from you for somebody that is so entrenched in the community. Like I said, as a business owner, a previous council member, you've done so much outside of your role as the mayor. And yeah, I actually want to kind of double click on that. You had already done Thrive, High Point, been integral to bringing Carolina Core FC to, and then you decided to be mayor. What was part of that transition, and what was that process like?
So, being someone, if I could back up a little bit, Jonathan, before ever going into public office, I was an educator and I worked in schools doing a myriad of things. I was everything from a substitute teacher to a site coordinator for communities and schools, focusing on wraparound student supports. I led programs for behavior intervention. I was an ISS coordinator at one point. I've been a coach. I've been an associate band director. I've been a tutor. I mean, I've been in education adjacent, working for various nonprofits and whatnot for really the better part of my professional career. And the reason why I transitioned from education to what I'm doing now in public office really had to do with the fact that while I thought we were doing really impressive things, that we were doing really purposeful things to work with young people, and we were seeing fruit from that work, what we also saw, Jonathan, were people falling through the cracks. Young folks who, despite how hard they were working, despite their best intentions, they were coming from circumstances and they were coming from communities that were underinvested, that were historically disenfranchised, marginalized neighborhoods that didn't seem to get the same level of attention. These were kids that, because of those circumstances and environment, if you were able to excel in that, you were like how Tupac said, you were the rose that grew from the concrete, right? But despite that, despite celebrating those roses, which I always do, I love to see folks make it. I just felt that we could do better. I felt that we shouldn't have to put our young people in situations where we're asking them to grow from concrete. We should be able to make High Point a very fertile place, the kind of ground that's conducive for you to make it here and for you to want to make it here. And there was work we had to do to make High Point that kind of place. And I ran in 2019 for city council. At the time, I was the youngest person to ever serve in that ward. I was also the youngest person of color to ever serve on city council. And during that time, we were just doing a lot of work, man. We were understanding the challenges people were bringing to us, and we were getting real creative. There were a number of things that we could do through government. There were things we had to also do outside of government by working and leveraging partnerships with nonprofits, with the private sector, with philanthropists. We were finding ways to say those challenges are solvable and we are the people who can get it done. And it was that level of confidence, that level of determination that lit fires underneath people. And before you knew it, there was a sort of coalescence of dreamers here in the city who were doing very, very special things. I mean, you talk about Thrive High Point, where we said, hey, if you're an entrepreneur, we want to make sure this is fertile ground for you. You talk about Carolina Core C. That was spun out of some good friends of mine, Megan Oglesby, her cousins, Matt and Mark Penley, and the entire investor group that's involved with them, believing in our city and thinking that we could take a big swing. We took a big swing, and so far, we're batting 1,000, it feels like, in this case. And Carolina Core C is so exciting because it's got a regional pool. We see people come from all throughout the state to come to games. I could be riding up the highway on I-40 going to Raleigh or going to Statesville, and I see the Vamos Fox magnet on the back of people's cars because people believe in CCFC. And it was that kind of energy and excitement that we thought soccer could bring. And in fact, it is bringing it. There are people who are like, man, I'm coming back and moving back into the city. And in fact, we've seen so many of the boomerang effects of that sort of thing where people leave, they go out, but it's like a boomerang. They end up coming back. We're seeing so many young professionals moving back into the city because they're saying, man, I see opportunity again in our city. And more than that, I see a path, I see a lane for me to walk in where I can help shape what's happening in my city. It's great to go down to big city somewhere else and participate in all the great things that they have going on. You can partake in all the fun and jobs and all that. But it's something about being able to do that in your hometown and know that you can contribute to building it. And we've found people who are willing to take on that challenge. We've found people who seemingly thrive in this kind of environment because they know High Point's going somewhere, and it's that kind of fuel that keeps them going. And so Thrive, High Point, Carolina Core FC, I could talk about what's happening with great organizations like High Point Discovered. I was on the founding board of that organization, and as we were kickstarting it and getting it started, my friend Christy Barber had this vision that people should see High Point through the kind of lens of almost like a rose-colored lens. Like, this is a beautiful city and we love this city. And we're going to talk about it through this mindset of opportunity, through this mindset of abundance, through this mindset of growth, that our best is still yet ahead of us and we haven't even tapped fully into our potential. And who knew what High Point Discovery would become? Now, Amber Williamson, the executive director there, Hannah Ray, who just got married, she's the creative director there, and that entire team are doing awesome work to tell these stories of High Point. And every time you read a story, you learn something else magnificent about High Point. And so, to your earlier question about what's the secret sauce, if you want to know the secret sauce of High Point, like I said, our people, you go to a place like High Point Discovered and just start reading, and you'll begin to understand very quickly why I'm so passionate and why I love our city so much. I could go on and on talking about all the things that over these past several years that we've been a part of creating, we've been a part of founding, we've been a part of building, because we believe in this city so much so. And I said it before, we barely scratched the surface, because in some cases, the very best things just, indeed, they take time. But we're planting the seeds right now. The $40 million housing fund that we're kickstarting right now is the kind of housing fund that will see us build thousands and thousands of units that will include affordability for people, for working families, middle class, working class families, to ensure that there's some place for you to lay your head, a place that you are proud to call home, in a neighborhood that provides all that you need, in a city that is fertile ground for you. That is the vision and that is the dream of High Point. And quite frankly, I feel like we're achieving that so far. We just got to keep going.
I feel it. Definitely feel it. I've said this many a time on this podcast. Passion. That is the one thing. Passion and then authenticity are the two things that people gravitate to, and it oozes through you when you're speaking. Like, you can see from how you articulate it to how your body language, you are passionate about the people, especially in the community itself. And I think that passion also comes through, and when you stated multiple times, you want this to be fertile ground for people to grow. We can definitely applaud the roses that come through the concrete, always will. But if we can have many more roses in fertile ground, that's what we're looking for. In High Point, that's what we're looking for in North Carolina, which I'm a part of, and that's what we're looking for in the United States, which we're all a part of. So I definitely applaud you for bringing that passion, but then also bringing the initiatives. Like, I read up about that $40 million fund, and it's spectacular that you're bringing affordability from the Thrive High Point to Discover High Point to bringing a major soccer team. You guys are definitely, like you said, batting 1,000. And not to diminish or kill the momentum, but I have to ask, please treat me as if you're explaining this to a child. What is a mayor?
So it's interesting, because I feel like every day, Jonathan, I'm still discovering, still learning myself what exactly a mayor is. You come in with this expectation that says, okay, great, mayor is the head of government here in High Point. It will be our job to ensure that this local government is firing on all cylinders, that we give what I would consider to be an exceptional staff. All 1,500 some employees that we have are exceptional. They're very talented, they're very sharp, and most importantly, they are good, hardworking, honest, committed folks. We got to ensure that from our vantage point, that we do what's necessary. We can't let politics get in the way of good progress. We got to make sure that those people have what they need, and then we got to get out the way, right? I think coming in, my focus was, if you can be a good head of government, then your staff feel like they have what they need to do well. The community feels that government is functioning in that way. You should be able to achieve a number of goals, a number of benchmarks, maybe some key performance indicators that you put out there. You should be able to achieve those. And the mayor's job is to fill in and function in whatever capacity is necessary to make that happen. I went to new mayor school, Jonathan, when I first got elected, and it was a program sponsored by Bloomberg. So if you know Bloomberg, Mike Bloomberg, former mayor of New York City, Bloomberg Philanthropies is his foundation that does incredible work all around the world. But they've got a certain sector of it that really just focuses on investing in local government, because Mike Bloomberg realized that in this big wide world of 7 billion people, that everyone lives in cities or towns or villages. And the people who are doing work to govern those respective municipalities, those communities, those are the people who you really got to rely on to get it right because it's closest to the people. And so he invests in mayors as well, since he was a mayor himself. He said he came into office and realized there wasn't no one else given professional development for mayors. And so he offers this great program. So I did the new mayor school, and then I also did the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative. So both these programs take place between Bloomberg and Harvard. And I bring that up because this first week I go to the new mayor school, they begin to talk about all the various ways that as a mayor, you end up having to function. That you certainly are going to have a legislative part of your work where you got to look at policy and do you have the right policy in place at the local level. There's certainly the fiduciary and financial aspect of what you do from the city budget, and are you deploying and investing resources in the best way that helps your city provide quality services and grow in the way that you want to. Also, these other sort of hats you wear that are outside the policy, that are outside the budget and the funding. But it's these hats that in some cases you might call them more of hats of influence, hats of power that you can use correctly, such as convening power. It's a mayor's job to bring people together. It's a mayor's job to be able to hopefully get people on the same page. As a candidate, when I ran, we were able to bring together a very broad-based coalition of people from all over the city, all different kinds of walks of life, different races and creeds, ages, generations to generation, who believed in what we were doing because we knew that once we won and got into the seat, then we would have to be a mayor for all of High Point. And so as a mayor, you have to leverage your ability to convene and bring people together because you know that our toughest challenges are not ones that anyone can take on by themselves. There's the African proverb that you probably know, Jonathan, that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you must go together. And it's that proverb, I think, that's been a guiding mantra for work that we do through public-private partnerships here in the city. And the mayor has to leverage that convening power. The mayor also has to leverage something that I find to be so profound. And I've got literally it's sitting here on my windowsill are sort of two titles that you wear as mayor. First is sort of comforter in chief, and that is that when things are going on, when people are worried about what's happening in the neighborhood, let's say, unfortunately, maybe there's gun violence in your community and a young person's life now is lost. What do we do to cope with that? We can't try to just get by it quickly because gun violence is still an epidemic around this country, and we have to look at it from a upstream point of view. We can't just say, well, it's simply bad people having bad guns. That's not what it is. I think there are systemic things that contribute to gun violence. I mean, as someone who worked with young folks for years, trust me, I know it's plenty of systemic things that contribute to why young people make those decisions. And we have to be able to understand that well. But in order for us to get through the healing as a community and then set our sights on becoming solutions oriented, you have to be a comforter in chief. You have to be able to show up in a way that can comfort your people and convene and bring them together and make things happen. And then there's another title that we learned about in this new mayor school, which is sort of being the chief hope officer. That if you are not bringing hope, then you're missing an opportunity to get the best out of your city. That in this crazy world we live in, where we see things in the news that can be very discouraging. We see things in the news that can make us just question the motives of folks, whether they're leaders or whoever they may be. When a gentleman drives to the homes of lawmakers in Minnesota and guns them down, right? That's heartbreaking. You have to be able to bring hope because hope is the kind of thing that I don't think you do on accident. In fact, if you're someone who reads any of the books from the great Barack Obama, his second book, second New York Times bestseller, is entitled The Audacity of Hope. And I love the way that's titled, Jonathan, because what Barack seems to suggest, or rather what I should say, what President Obama seems to suggest, is that it takes boldness to have hope. In fact, you have to choose it. You have to very intentionally choose to have hope. You have to choose to say, despite what I'm seeing, despite the weight and heaviness of disaster, despite losing loved ones, despite uncertainty in our economy, I remain hopeful that we will get through this, that change can happen, and that we as people are still better together. And as long as we choose hope and choose love, we can get through it. Being a chief hope officer here in the city is a role that I'm learning more and more about because I'll be honest with you, Jonathan, being a young elected official, I thought so much of my role was about, look, I gotta come up with the solutions. I gotta be able to sort of line it up that way, execute. We gotta solve problems. I gotta be able to shake people, look them in the eye. I gotta shake their hands, look them in the eye, and tell them we're getting the stuff done, right? So serious, just so on it. And you gotta do that too. But because as I said before, some of these problems just take time to navigate. In the interim, people need hope. And hope is what you hold on to. And Langston Hughes asked the question, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up in like a raisin in the sun if it continues to be deferred? As mayor, we have to somehow channel the energy and the optimism that people have for what's coming while giving them the will and determination to remain hopeful as we get there, that there is a promised land. And indeed, dear friends, we will make it.
That's powerful. And I've never been a mayor, but I've been a father and a husband. And sometimes I feel like before those things happen, it was do, and just have all the right answers. But sometimes it's just hold space and listen and understand and figure out that we're going to get through this and provide that hope that this is just a season that we're going through. So while I've never been a mayor, I can take that into my own life and see how, especially as type A high performers, it's how can we figure out and have all the solutions because everybody's looking to us. It's like, yes, everybody often is looking to us, but sometimes they don't need a quick solution. Sometimes they need to understand that this is going to be a long-term thing. But if you listen and you provide that sounding board, even and just be present, like you said, that convening power. Sometimes just bringing everybody together. We had a tragedy in our community, but I'm healing and reeling from it too. But we're going to do this together, and I think that is definitely something I know I can get behind, and I'm sure that the people of your community in High Point can definitely get behind. So that was powerful. And you evoke some big names, Langston Hughes, Barack Obama, and Tupac. I appreciate them all. I definitely appreciate them all. Now, kind of getting more to the X's and O's. When you were coming in and through now as the mayor, what were the strategic priorities of High Point? And had you guys recently gone through like a strategic or comprehensive planning process, or are you coming through that pretty soon here?
Yeah, so I'll talk about coming in, what those priorities were, Jonathan, and I'm gonna go just a little in detail, as you said, that the X's and O's, if you will, for listeners who are in municipal government. Some of this it'll sound familiar. For others, I'll try to your point, sort of explain it like we're talking to a group of fifth graders here. Ultimately, in government, we have a responsibility to ensure financial solvency because at the end of the day, while we are a local government, we still, in many cases, operate, we function, we program, we staff, we do all the things like a business does, right? And we can't provide government services, whether that is doing roads, infrastructure, and also including your electrical service, your water and sewer, public safety, that is fire and police, economic development with recruiting jobs and supporting business, picking up trash and recycling, leaf collection, just all the things that you can think of, parks and rec, so many things that go into our work. We can't provide those services if we don't, in the short term and in the long term, have the good strategies in place to ensure that we can keep providing high quality services and do it with a real degree of efficiency, because ultimately taxpayers, what they don't want are you being wasteful of taxpayer funds, right? It is so critical that you remain transparent, you remain honest, and you remain efficient. You got to use taxpayer funds to the highest and best use. And so, all that said, I use that as the backdrop to talk about what the strategic priorities were when I came to council and then how we evolved in those priorities. When I first came in, they really had three things. One was they wanted to address what issues we were seeing throughout neighborhoods in the city due to blight. And so these were issues of code enforcement that had not been resolved. We had a team that was working very hard, but quite frankly, we just didn't have enough, right? I think at the time, maybe we had two part-time code enforcement officers when they first started on this initiative. and 2 part-time code enforcement officers in a city of 118,000 people, you can get a real backlog because code enforcement are, you see a home or a building and there's issues with it, right? In terms of the roof falling in, or maybe you see, for example, yards with grass that's way overcut, cars parked where they're not supposed to be parked. Like we have code in our city of how things should be kept and how they should look. And quite frankly, residents throughout the city appreciate us enforcing those codes because that's what keeps your neighborhood looking good, keeps your property values either being sustained or improving. What people don't want is that, something that feels maybe unpleasant or doesn't look as attractive because we're not enforcing code. Also, it's more than just the aesthetics appeal of it. Enforcing codes have a lot to do with safety as well. I mean, so many of our codes are there to also just ensure safety. And so we decided to beef up the arm of code enforcement officers that we had at the time. And this major backlog of cases, we were able to cut way down on that. And as a result, not only were we seeing neighborhoods improving in terms of the aesthetics of them and the safety of them, but also property values were improving because maybe, those homes that need to be demolished because it was run down, whoever owned it was just sitting on it for 40 years, never had any incentive to do anything with it. And ultimately, as a city, what we said was, look, we understand if you're holding on to this house and maybe you feel like you don't have the means to take care of it. We actually don't want properties just to be demolished just for the sake of being demolished. We actually would love for you to do something with that. And you've got options. You could either invest in it yourself and do it and know you'll get a return because someone will come rent it, or you could sell it to someone and someone else can do all that. You can fix it up and sell it and get some good profit from it. There's some we need you to have some incentive to do something with that property because that home is sitting in between 2 homes that families live in, and they're worried about that home, how run down it is when the grass is overrun. There could be snakes in there. If it's a rundown house, you don't know what's inside. It could be raccoons or all types of critters. It could also be other people in there doing nefarious activities in there that shouldn't be done. Like, people could just get really concerned. And whatever you think about the way we sort of project what could happen in those homes, the truth is you have real people on the ground concerned about that kind of thing. And so we address code enforcement in a major way through blight reduction, and proud to say that we were able to achieve what our aim is there. And we didn't really sort of do away with that goal. What we said was great. We now have cut way down on that backlog, and we've got the proper staffing in place to sustain, ensuring that we never get backed up like that again, and that we can ensure great sort of neighborhood quality going forward. So that was a great goal. We also had this goal around, and this used to be the language, it was recruit and retain millennials. Now, to be clear, Jonathan, this was a goal they had before I ever got on council. Because I'm pretty sure I would have got on council at the time and be like, yo, don't call anything recruit and retain millennials. That just, I don't know. It sounded so out of jive. Just for the record, I was the first millennial to ever be elected to top one city council. And so, we ended up making it more about young professionals, right? And changing the language up a little bit. But the goal was like, look, you can almost tell a city and its success based on if young professionals want to be there. And you might think that sounds trivial for whatever reason, but ultimately, all of us age, all of us get older, right? We raise our families and so on and so forth. We retire and we transition on. If you don't have the next generation wanting to be here to come behind you, then what happens is your population begins to decline. And as your population begins to decline, the people who, if I go back to our business model again, the people who are paying taxes in your city, that starts to decline. So now your tax revenue is going down, which means your government services are going down. And if government services are going down, people who live here now and see those services declining say, I don't know if I want to live here either. So now it's just sort of this compound effect where you're losing population, losing revenue, and you got to fight back against that. And we know cities all throughout this country who have dealt with what it is to see tax revenue go down, population go down, and that compound effect of trying to fight back from it. And so we were committed to retaining young professionals. I'll transition now to the third goal, and that third goal really builds on what I just talked about there, really in these first two, and that we had to recharge the core of our city, and we decided to do that through downtown revitalization. Part of the beauty of our city in its history of being the furniture capital of the world also is that this market that you come to twice a year, which when you come to it, it looks like New York City. Just to be clear, we are very proud of our market, the largest economic event in the state of North Carolina. It is also the kind of event that brings an annual economic impact to the state of North Carolina that is equivalent to 4 Super Bowls each year. every time the Super Bowl goes somewhere, these prepare themselves for it. They buy things, they invest, they do all the stuff they need to because they know major economic impact. This is a huge single day event. The market's like a week long, and you've got 50 to 100,000 people coming in, and they're staying in hotels, they're buying gas, they're flying in, they're eating at restaurants, they're purchasing all this furniture and rugs and things like that. And there's a lot of money changing hands, and the economic impact of it is pretty major. So to be clear, we love our market. But the challenge is that so much real estate that's used for that market is really just occupied 2 weeks out of the year. The other 50 weeks of the year is basically vacant. It's kind of dormant. And that now for 50 weeks of the year, you go to the core of our city and what should be our downtown, and it feels like a ghost town. And so we had to recreate a new downtown and commit to downtown revitalization. And the big reason to need to do that, Jonathan, goes back to what I said before. If the core of your city is not a place that people want to live in, what ends up happening is those property values end up diminishing. And as those property values begin to diminish, again, you have the issue of quality services. There was also the issue and that within the city, our infrastructure really is concentrated from the inside out, right? So you think about where our fire stations are placed at throughout the city, like wherever our fire stations are at, and them getting to your home has a lot to do with what kind of home insurance you can get, right? Because there's a great chance that that asset can be better protected. Where our police are situated at, how our roads are built, designed to flow, our water and sewer, our electrical grid. I mean, all of that infrastructure is concentrated where if you're in the core of our city, we can get the best density there because that infrastructure can support it, as opposed to the outer parts of our city where that infrastructure historically is not there. And if someone wants to build out there, then we have to go build all that infrastructure. Well, the thing is, going to build that infrastructure sounds good on the front end, but you got to maintain it. Well, the issue is that if we're building new infrastructure that we now have to maintain, we still have the old infrastructure that was already built that needs to be maintained, and after a certain amount of years needs to be replaced. That's very expensive. And so in our line of work, if we've got infrastructure that's not being utilized to the level of capacity that it should be utilized, that's not efficient itself. Going back to what I said before, people want quality services, but they want you to be efficient. We're at a point right now where I believe the last time I saw this number, and Jonathan, forgive me, I don't have all the data in front of me, but last time I saw this number is that within the core of our city, we can sustain 25 units per acre in terms of density based on the infrastructure we have. We can do that without that having any pressure. We're less than 40% of that right now. We're at roughly 9 units per acre in the core of our city. And so the problem is we've got all this infrastructure that is underutilized, while at the same time we're having to build all this infrastructure around the outskirts of our city, which is now putting more pressure on our system. I mean, we just acquired land for us to have to build a new fire station eventually in the future because of the growth happening in our city. Again, it's great to grow your city, but we got fire stations that are right here in the core of our city that I'd argue in some cases you might think are underutilized because our population in the core of our city is not as big as it should be. Now, don't get me wrong, those fire stations, those fire trucks get their use. I don't want any taxpayer to think we're wasting their money whatsoever. They get their use, but we're looking at optimizing the infrastructure we have here in the city by ensuring that we can invest in our downtown. People want to move back to our downtown. It's going to bring more jobs back into the core of our city. And what's going to happen to our tax base is going to keep going up and up and up. I'm proud to say here, Jonathan, and anyone who's heard me speak about it knows how proud we are of this one data point, which is that when they set this goal several years ago, they did a catalyst project to build a stadium in our downtown. That's where Carolina Core FC plays. That's where High Point Rockets baseball plays. That's where we host concerts, all types of things, festivals, so on and so forth. A lot of development around that stadium. And the hope was when we built that stadium, that it could generate a $100 million improvement to our tax base over a 10-year period. That was the sort of projected goal. We said, hey, let's set this as our target. We're going to build this catalyst project through the stadium, and we should see a $100 million improvement to our tax base in 10 years. We end up seeing a $250 million improvement to our tax base in 6 years. So we did more than double what we wanted to achieve in terms of that improvement, and we did it in nearly half the time. And it's just going up and up and up. What that says is when public sector invests strategically and does it the right way through partnerships, then the private sector comes along and they invest as well. So our goal was, could public sector invest in a way where it could be a catalyst, and then the return on investment would be private sector investment coming into our city instead of going to other places. And we've been very beneficial with that. Now our strategic plans look at us building on that. It's continuing what we're doing here in our downtown because we know that that's still important. We're really leaning into workforce development, and so along the West Green corridor here in our city, there's a lot of former manufacturing buildings and mills, so on and so forth. We want to see those be repurposed for adaptive reuse, where now it can address some of our housing issues while also having some other mixed uses in there, office and retail, some sort of light industrial, advanced manufacturing going on. So we're investing in workforce development, invested in more housing and seeing that be improved here in the city. We rebranded as a city a couple of years ago. We went through the long process of engaging our community to hear them say, "Hey, who is our city and what should we be going forward in the future?" And we came up with this sort of tagline that what we create in High Point changes the world. So much of that is a play, again, going back to that furniture history, because you won't talk to a furniture designer, an interior designer, anyone in that industry who doesn't know High Point. You just won't talk to them around the world. And many of them are influenced by what happens right here in High Point because this is the mecca for the industry. And so what we create in High Point changes the world, but we want that to be something that could be felt and it could be indoctrinated and perpetuated beyond just furniture. We wanted it to live through so many other things. And so that kind of rebrand that happened had a real rejuvenating effect. Here in this city, we feel like people are coalescing around that vision. And look, we're continuing to look at where the issues are. We want to adjust things like transportation. We want to be innovative in how we're doing it. So we're piloting this micro transit program that I'm really excited about, that looks at how we can move people where they need to go, but not have to think about always putting them on these big buses because maybe that's not the most efficient way to do it. So yeah, that's probably a long answer to the X's and O's of the strategic plan, but really excited about it. Feels like we've been successful and feels like we've got some more opportunity to grow.
Absolutely. It seems like you guys are thoughtful in your strategic planning, and then the execution sounds like it's been incredible. Just coming down to the stadium and the public investment followed by the private investment. I definitely want to double click on one thing that you did bring up. When you start to think of retaining millennials, or better, retaining young professionals, are you guys doing that? And the follow up, I always like to ask, do you have a community that is cradle to grave? Like, can I come there fresh out of high school, either or get a trade job, or go to trade school, go to university, come out with a job, work hard, work my way up, have a young family. Maybe I need a small house, or maybe I need a apartment, 2-bed apartment. And then kind of getting to the bigger family, the 2.5 kids, the dog, the picket fence, everything, then to retirement age. And now my kids are out of the house, and I may want to age in place. So maybe I don't need this house, but I need some other living situation that would make more sense for me on the back end of my life, for lack of a better term. How do you think High Point is doing there, and what are you guys doing to make that a reality for your residents?
Yeah, Jonathan, that's a great question. I think the easiest way to answer your first question there about what are you doing to make this a place where young professionals want to be? Many cities, I think, are doing their best to follow the model, a place where you live, a place where you work, and a place where you play. Right. So live, work, play. And if we can make all three of those things work well together, then we can have sort of a really good formula for this being sort of a happening. And so we've got to have those housing options, as you said, where regardless of your income choice, income level, your job choice, your family situation, whether you're married with kids, you're single, you're retired, or whatever, we gotta make sure that we have those housing options here. From a work standpoint, we gotta constantly be focused on what it is to recruit jobs to our city, but also I'd say recruit jobs to the region. There's a big announcement roughly a week ago, a week from yesterday, big announcement of Jet Zero coming into the region at our airport. The airport sits right in the middle of Greensboro, High Point, and Winston-Salem. So 14,500 jobs coming in. You know, not one city is going to say, okay, great, I'll have 14,500 homes for you tomorrow for those jobs. Not one city can say that. So all of us have to work together to make sure that we're increasing and building into our housing stock for those jobs to come here, because oftentimes people follow jobs, right? Like, it's just human nature. We have to provide for ourselves and for our kin. And so it's important that you get yourself a job somewhere. And so us recruiting jobs is such a big deal of that strategy. People will follow jobs, but jobs also go somewhere where they're thinking about the cost of living. And cost of living pressure happens when your population increase somehow dramatically outpaces what you're doing to develop housing. It's kind of the old supply and demand law there, that demand's going so up for people to want to live in the area, but supply is not increasing at the same level. So now you have scarcity and prices are going up. We're able to monitor and sort of manage cost of living here because as we projected so much growth in our economy with jobs, we also were planning for that through infrastructure investments and housing development, and saying that as those jobs come, we want to be prepared. And companies know that. That's why a lot of companies are moving to this region, and because we're thinking about our cost of living, having the housing and infrastructure in place. And more than that, we're also thinking about education and workforce development. We're saying that for you to have the jobs, you got to have the kind of workforce that can do the jobs and do it well. And so we had a real focus on what it is to invest in education. That big school bond that was done was the largest in the state at the time. It was $2 billion school bond that's investing in public schools all around Gifford County, but also just workforce development, working with our local community colleges, working with all of our universities. We're ensuring that here in this region, that for the jobs to come, that they're saying, is this the kind of place where people are going to want to move to and can thrive and be sustained here? Because if a company moves to your area and they're saying, man, the cost of living is too high in your area, what they know is that feasibly they can't hire folks and pay them a modest wage. They're gonna have to pay them like way above market is where they go somewhere else, because they have to pay them that just for the people to live there in that city. And so a lot of times they're looking at cost of living and saying, okay, great. Could someone live in this city, get an income of $50,000 and be okay? Yeah, based on all the formula and everything we've seen, the housing costs, transportation costs, healthcare costs, food costs, so on and so forth, they can live here and make it, and it'll be okay. So we're investing in that. I think the best way to answer your other question too, are we sort of a cradle to career or a cradle to grave sort of community? I'd say yes. I'd say that we're investing finally in the early child care space to make sure that we're taking the time for families that are growing. You know, nothing's more important to us as parents than ensuring that our children have the very best. And so we're making the kind of investments in early child care that's needed to ensure folks are kindergarten ready, where they can read well, they can do math well, they can develop life skills and grow up to be good contributing adults here in society. But then also just to put a point on the last part in terms of as people age here from generation to generation, High Point's ranked as one of the best retirement places in the country. It's a thing that you might not know because it's almost like a best kept secret. You probably think of retirement places, you think of Florida and beaches and things like that. Folks love coming to North Carolina because, if you want to move down to Florida, Florida's getting so expensive down there. Also, for some people, they just say it's too hot. So I know a lot of Yankees who come from New York who come on down to retire and they try Florida out for like a year. They're like, man, it's a little too hot for me. And they move back up to North Carolina because here in North Carolina, you get all four seasons. You get the beach, you get the mountains, and you get a modest cost of living. As well as we have a lot of great retirement places here and a lot of investment in places like our active adult center that's meant for folks age 50 and up, right? There's a certain quality of life that you can enjoy while you're here in this city and in this region.
I've heard some great things, and I know we have to close out soon. But before we get to your last words and your vision for High Point in the future, I have to ask, and I hate to do it because everything does seem positive, everything is going well, and I am happy to hear that. But everything can't be all sunshines and rainbows. Is there maybe one challenge or just something that if you could snap your fingers, you could make the community better if you had unlimited budget or unlimited time?
Yeah. I think the housing piece and the transportation piece are the two that come to mind. While we're doing great things in those spaces, and I feel that our effort we're taking is both Herculean and fruitful, I know that right now those are just the two biggest areas of opportunity that we must get better on, and we must do it with urgent pace. I think that it's great to have the kind of growing economy we do, but what worries me is that we're creating all these jobs and more people are going to start moving into the area because of all these jobs coming here. And what's going to happen is some of our sort of local folks who have already been here, that they might start getting basically displaced because they're outbid in the marketplace. And They're not able to keep up from a cost of living standpoint because we didn't do our part in building enough housing supply. So I worry about that. I also worry that, we're a growing city, and right now, to really make it, not just in High Point, but in the entire region, Greensboro, Winston, and surrounding towns, and in order to make it here, you basically need a car. Like, you have to have your own car. It's got to be a working car, a good car, and all the things. And you might think, well, duh, just get a car. But that's really tough if you're a young professional. That's also really tough if you're someone who's just conscious of the environment and maybe you don't want to add another car into the world, which I'm not mad about that. I'm not here to try to make the case for having cars. Not, I promise I'm not there. What I'm saying is it's the choice that people want to choose to live. If someone chooses to not have to rely on a car, are we the kind of city that is conducive for that? Do we have public transportation set up a certain way? Do we have bike lanes and sidewalks set up for pedestrian and cyclists to be able to move throughout our city? I'm proud that we're building this great urban greenway that'll go through the heart of our city, that will connect the eastern parts of our cities, the sort of northeastern parts of our city with the southwestern parts of our city. This greenway will be really special because I think it'll get a lot of use and not only be good from a health standpoint, quality of life standpoint, but also to get people where they need to go. But we're looking at the other areas where we still need to improve. We still have bus lines that don't run past 6 p.m. in the evening. You might think that's a ludicrous thing to hear. I mean, think of folks working second and third shift. They're kind of stuck, right? In terms of needing to use public transportation, they have to call Uber. Now, our microtransit program is piloting what it's like for us to offer that in various places of the city for people on a sort of 24-hour basis. But we got to figure that out. If we're going to be this growing economy, people got to move and get to where they need to go to. And I think here in the region, we can just do a better job in terms of transportation. And all around the country, we can do a better job.
Yeah, you hit two big ones. And I'm glad the one thing I can say is you're thoughtfully thinking about it, and that's the first step. And neglecting to understand that these are issues and these are national issues is the first step towards failure. And the Gentry podcast, Gentry with a J, is definitely a play on that displacement that you were talking about it. But Gentry, gentrification with a J, is people utilizing the community resources to create long-term value for long-term residents. So everything that you're speaking of to make sure that people aren't displaced, they have the opportunity to not just age in place, but to live in place as young professionals. So to end up, I definitely want to leave the viewers with your vision for High Points. What will they be saying about High Point in 20 years from now?
The vision for High Point, my hope, my dream is that this will be a place where people feel that they could lean in to their boldest aspirations. That High Point was the place that was able to nurture me as I wanted to create, as I wanted to grow, as I wanted to live and raise family. We don't want to take anyone for granted. We want this to be a great melting pot of all the best of humanity. There's a lot of work we've done here in our city to support those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, to support people of color, to support people of other ethnic backgrounds, to support people of different ages. And that's an important part. That's what makes the city so special. And my hope is that in 20 years, people will say, if they moved here, man, that was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And if we can hear that, then I know we'll have achieved what we set out to do.
I think that's great to end on. The best decision I've ever made, High Point, North Carolina. I'm excited for your community. Obviously, you have the big announcement with 14,000 jobs coming to the regional area. The passion that you bring and the community that is behind you. I am very excited to see over the next decade just how far you guys come. For all our viewers, once again, this has been the Gentry Podcast. We have Cyril Jefferson, who is the mayor of High Point, North Carolina. Thank you for coming, Cyril.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. And to all our viewers, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Take care.